I am. I think it is a testament to devotion, dedication, when one does something in spite of one's condition. My condition is questionable. I could be getting sick. I could be tired. I could be irritated. But they all come together. Those possibilities come together and give me a kind of malaise. So here I am, talking to you, talking to the birds, to the trees, the clouds. Upon watching my talk, my discourse last night, I realized that many people, mostly European, mostly white or European, would not know why everybody was cursing out my family. I didn't speak of it. I kind of forgot. So I'm going to say why. At the time when I was born, most of mixed race relationships were hidden. Most of them were white slaveholders raping black women, producing people like me. In the case of my mother and father, they came together because of love, because of the Communist Party, which at that time was welcoming to mixed race and mixed race beings, mixed race relationships. So not only was our family a mixed race relationship, but almost all of the friends we had, because we were part of almost a group, a club of mixed race relationships and marriages. I was one of the oldest of our group. I think I was the oldest. I think there was only one woman who was older than I was, but even so, we were pretty much born about the same time, and at that time, white people and black people were not pleased by us. Mixed race angered them both from different angles. White European people were all about pure race. There's still a leftover from Hitler's behavior. Black people were all about the destruction of the race in a different sense. Also a kind of whiff about the raping that occurred through slavery by the white master and the black slave, which happened a lot. I recently was speaking to somebody who claimed that slavery didn't exist, or that slavery wasn't so bad. I'm not clear what that assertion was. Slavery was terrible. And if you speak to me about this, and you say that that the United States does not need to do reparations for slavery, then I am inspired to definitely walk away from you, but I am also inspired to dress you up and down with language that you probably would not like. If it wasn't for slavery, the United States would not be the United States. It would have never gained the prosperity that it gained without slavery, without the murder of all of the people who picked cotton and did all sorts of menial jobs in order to push the United States further into a more prosperous place. All that the United States does at this moment, the domination through electronics, computers, etc., is because of slavery. If you argue that that is not the case, then you have no understanding of logic. It's not. And it's not a guess. It's not a mythology. It's not a imaginative idea. It is truly what happened. So what occurred was that my family was a mixed race family in the midst of pure thinking people, both black and white. The notion of purity is and has been a belief in superiority, in that pureness created more superior beings. And that's erroneous too. The proof is me. The proof also is all of my peers and friends who were mixed race, and all of those who are now mixed race, who are now taking over all the various industries. Pureness is an egotistical illusion. Evolution comes from the mixing of beings, not from the isolation of beings. I didn't know that when I was a child, however. I just knew that everybody thought I was a beast or a monster. I could be considered an alien. I could have at that time. Even now, I am considered an alien by most of you. My music, my method of expression is too much for you. I could quite directly say it's too advanced for you. Your brains are based on purebred thinking. You can't understand the mixture that I bring. You can't understand why I dance with bells from my ancestors on my ankles. You cannot understand why I play the violin from my ancestors in Hungary and Austria and Russia. You can't understand how I sing the way I do from all my African ancestors. All of my ancestors were singers. My grandmother's voice was one of the most domineering voices I've ever heard. I don't love her for it, but however, when she used it, she did it at times that always upset me. It was never in that aesthetic way that I express. However, when I have used my voice as a domineering tool, I have injured people. My grandmother would take us to church on Sundays. I hated church. I still do. She would take us to church on Sundays, and she was very devoted to Christianity, another product of slavery. She was not a slave, however, but she was a menial. She would take us to church, and the way she sang embarrassed me so much because she was so loud. She was so boisterous. She dominated the pews. She sang so loud. That's where I get it from. That's where I get this voice from her. That's why it was so difficult for me to start singing. I was so embarrassed by her. When I discovered I had that voice, that I had that ability to muster such volume. I'm tiny. I have this huge voice. It's so huge that that's why it was scary to go down to the center of a bood. Because if I did my ceremony on the corner, on the center of a bood, using that voice, I could very easily have been arrested because I would have dominated that area. The other reason and the other use of my grandmother's voice that was difficult for me was she would berate my grandfather. And it is from my grandfather that I get my sweet nature. What a sweet being he was. What a sweet being he was. He snored loudly, however, and I could not be, nor could my grandmother, be in the same room with him when he fell asleep. That was over. It was snoring very loud, but what a sweet being he was. My grandfather was a calligrapher extraordinaire. His handwriting was the most beautiful handwriting I've ever seen. He should have been a calligrapher for any number of calligraphy institutions. I don't know what to call them. As my grandmother should have been a pianist in some orchestra or a church organist or something. Instead, both of them did menial jobs and were forced to do menial jobs because of the United States. Because of that racist policy that they held for so long, and they still hold. I will not let the United States up from their racism, nor Europe. she would berate my grandfather in a way that was horrific for me because I loved him so much. He was, as I said, one of the kindest beings that I have ever encountered. He actually reminds me of the Balinese. His ability to smile and to greet people in such a genuinely friendly way was extraordinary. My grandmother, when he died, learned that all of their friends were friends with because of him. And every one of them backed out, disappeared. It hurt her feelings immensely. Her berating would happen sometimes when we were brought over to be staying with them for a while. Almost all of a sudden she was berating him for not vacuuming the floor or for not putting something this way or something that way. It hurt me so much. So I speak of my grandmother. It was very difficult for me to forgive her for all of these things. I do now because I recognize where I get the gift of my voice from.